How could it happen? Can it happen? Is it even possible to conceive the idea, reasonable, I should say, that Tulane could beat Ole Miss in Oxford with first-time head coach Pete Golding? What a way to start your coaching career. Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss is here to discuss just that. Steven, just indulge me. I'm going to Disneyland for Christmas, so I will pass through Fantasyland at one point in time or another. So put yourself there. If Tulane goes in and wins this game, what will have transpired?
Well, first of all, if that transpires, I sentence you to have to ride It's a Small World at least twice while you're at Disneyland.
I will be riding it at least once.
Yeah. But if Tulane is able to stay in this game, that meant that Ole Miss turned the ball over at very inopportune times. Maybe there's a special teams touchdown that happened along the way. Stuff like that allows underdogs to stay in. And whenever you are 17.5-point favorites, you need real help. So it's going to be up to Ole Miss to not give it to them. Don't hold, don't have inopportune penalties, and don't turn the football over, and Ole Miss will be fine on Saturday.
Game 1, 45-10 was the final score, if memory serves. It was played on this very field, by the way. I mean, we've got real deja vu here. At least Oklahoma, Alabama is being played in a different stadium than it was before. But is your confidence level pretty high that Ole Miss with Pete Golding at the helm now and Lane Kiffin at LSU officially is still just going to be able to roll?
Well, the problem that Tulane had in the first matchup is not going to go away in this second matchup. And that was the fact that they just couldn't match up against the Ole Miss offensive line or against Ole Miss's defensive line. And you really can't Band-Aid over that. So I don't know. I wish it wasn't a rematch, but if you're an Ole Miss fan and somebody said, hey, you're going to get a college football playoff game at home and you're going to be 18-point favorites, there's nobody that would say no to that. I mean, you're heading up to cover a college football playoff game this weekend as well, and it's a very similar situation without the rematch. You definitely would rather be in that situation than Oklahoma and Alabama being a 1.5 spread, or Texas A&M and Miami being about 3 points as well. That would cause some anxiety. This one caused a little bit of a coronation, a little bit of a celebration.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's path definitely on the favorable side of things. I think Duck fans, after getting Ohio State in the first round last year, happy to have James, or in the quarterfinals rather, I think they're happy to have James Madison, at least at some level, because the path ahead will include Texas Tech if they win that game, probably Indiana, who you'd play for a second time, and maybe Georgia or Ohio State coming from the other side of the bracket.
Now. Come on now.
Or Ole Miss.
Yeah,
It's all on the table there. But bringing it back to this particular game, when I've talked about Tulane on the show, something I always find a way to mention is Jake Retzloff's legs. And I think they're going to have to be used in this game because we know Ole Miss has the advantage up front. So how do you at least get some of that back? If you're the Green Wave, you got to create a numbers advantage or give yourself a more favorable matchup. That often involves quarterback run. It's been a part of them, a part of their offensive identity this year, I think, when they're at their best. But it doesn't always come on design quarterback runs. You know, one of those kind of sicko film breakdown guru, whatever you want to call it, things that I'm watching for in this game is rush lane discipline. Because if you get out of contain with Jake Retzloff, he will take off and run. And that can create an explosive play, keep drives alive, do all sorts of good things for the Green Wave.
Yeah, and one thing that's really interesting or weird or however you want to put it, Ole Miss has faced Talon Green, John Mateer, just mobile quarterback after mobile quarterback. Gunnar Stockton against the Georgia Bulldogs, Kamario Taylor from Mississippi State, which is going to be a fantastic player once he develops. Ole Miss going against Jake Retzloff, probably the second or third most mobile quarterback that they've seen this season. So they should be used to run lane discipline, and they should be used to not overextending themselves, that they can handle what's going on. He doesn't throw the ball incredibly well. That's how he struggled in the first matchup against Ole Miss. And if he has a similar struggle against Ole Miss this time, I think the result could be about the same.
I think Tulane, to pull an upset here, has to win the turnover battle. Probably has to be by at least 2. And Retzloff it could be. I think that's why I said at least 2. Like, if it's one turnover that Tulane's defense forces, and they've been good at that this season, and Ole Miss doesn't force any, I don't think that's enough. Yeah. I think you have to have a number of flip the field, change the momentum, get easy points. I think that has to happen a couple times, and certainly Tulane's capable of doing that. I don't know how capable they are against Ole Miss in this particular spot, but they also have to protect the ball. Their worst loss of the year came on the road against an average UTSA team in the American. What happened? Retzloff got benched because he kept turning the football over, and they had to bring in Brendan Sullivan at quarterback. So if that doesn't go their way, I really can't see him winning the football game. But I want to go to the Ole Miss side of this, Steven, on offense. Lane Kiffin's been the play caller. He's not there. What do you think that changes, if anything, for the Ole Miss offense?
Well, Charlie Weiss calls about 90% of the plays for Ole Miss, even when Lane Kiffin was there.
Okay.
Lane Kiffin just basically had veto, and all those Lane Kiffin shot plays where he threw a clipboard, that's stuff that he called. But Charlie Weiss, Ole Miss's offense runs so quickly that you don't have time to have all of the back and the forth and what's going on. So I think it's going to look fairly similar. Maybe you're not going to go for a 4th and 7 on your own 25 up 10 points. Maybe that's going away. I don't know. But I think this offense is going to look a little bit more conservative than it was under Lane Kiffin, which honestly, they're talented enough to be a little bit more conservative. You're still going to have Keywan Lacey. You're still going to have Trinidad Chambliss. You're still going to have those bevy of wide receivers out on the outside. They're going to be dangerous. I just think they're going to be a little bit more conservative. And the important thing with this Ole Miss football team that nobody is talking about, after the Georgia game, Ole Miss basically benched the drop 8, rush 3 passers through 3 defensive linemen because of what Georgia did to Ole Miss. After that, the Oklahoma game, they started really turning up the heat on John Mateer and the quarterbacks they faced after that. And the defense has been much better to the point where now all of a sudden randomly they're a top 25 defense in all of college football. That is interesting against Tulane because you could see Ole Miss speed him up. There also could be a chance for him to get loose with his legs. That might just look a little bit different, but the defense has been much, much improved since they made that change.
Is there anything else about this game that stands out in your mind as, man, Ole Miss has just got to do this, or they just have to avoid that, and they'll wind up rolling again? Do you think this score kind of repeats itself from the first matchup?
No, I think it's going to be a tighter game. And the reason it's going to be a tighter game, in the first matchup, if everybody remembers, and they might not, Tulane went for several 4th downs in Ole Miss territory, and Ole Miss stopped them each and every time. You have to figure just the law of average means that they're going to make it work. So instead of 10 points, maybe they score 17 or 24. Now, the problem with Tulane is they're in the south of 100 a group of passing yards allowed, and that is not a place you want to be against this Ole Miss offense. And you have an All-American running back that you're going to have to pay attention to, and a quarterback that's a dual threat. It's not a great matchup for the Tulane Green Wave. So while I think Tulane's going to score and play much better than they did the first time, I'm having trouble figuring out how they're going to stop Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's where I come down as well. They're secondary, which is strange because last year their defense was great, and John Summerall's a defensive guy, and it just hasn't been there this year. And I don't know how that's suddenly getting right unless Ole Miss just makes a bunch of their own mistakes and drops and penalties. And, there are 2 different types of the same particular stat. There are turnovers, and then there are giveaways. If you fumble a handoff in the backfield and the defense jumps on it, that's a giveaway. A takeaway, on the other hand, is a guy goes up in a 50-50 ball and makes a one-handed catch diving over his head. Like that's a takeaway. Ole Miss has to avoid the giveaways because I don't know that this Green Wave defense is going to generate a lot of takeaways.
Yeah. And also another thing that if you're an Ole Miss fan or you're used to watching Ole Miss football over the last several years, I don't think you're going to see much powder blue as far as jerseys go in this playoff run. I think you're going to see more of the classics. Pete Golding is going to buy back in with those classic style uniforms.